All right, well, our next matchup coming through, we're going to have yet another deck that we have not seen yet. It is a Misfortune piloted by Ali Eldrazi, if you are familiar, of long-term Magic the Gathering grinder, going up against Litton Lover on Annie.
Yeah, you know, Ali, I know him more as an acquaintance, but just a really long-time Magic grinder, big in that scene. I've seen he's really been getting into Riftbound. It's really cool to see some of these players from other card games kind of like, you know, test the waters with Riftbound. I would expect him to be, you know, really great here as he is in Magic, and really cool to see this Misfortune deck he's bringing. I imagine this is going to be the other side of the Dazzling Aurora coin we saw from the earlier Skarren match.
Yeah, and we actually saw him at Vegas as well. Had a pretty deep run, didn't quite make the top 8, but still, you know, the fact is he's flying around grinding Riftbound already. I love that players from all across the TCG sphere are kind of joining together to say, you know what, Riftbound looks great. I'm going to jump in there and try that out, as we do have basically the confirmation that this is an Aurora Misfortune with the Sigil of the Storm being the first battlefield. So whenever Annie tries to go conquer there, going to be slowing down the game with some of those runes. And on the other side, another Warren start. I think most of the Annies have coalesced on this Warren's Scrap Heap Game 1 game plan.
Yeah, just like you were talking about earlier, the Warren's just a really powerful way for Annie to leverage the Scrap Heaps early and ensure those extra card draws and find, you know, just really every trick and tool they need to finesse around their opponents.
All right, so starting out, this is not the first time we've seen this happen, and I wonder if it's just players not being used to which side the decks are going to be on. Maybe they play on the other side normally, just trying to use the zones as best they can, but that is going to be Traveling Merchant to start things out. And the pass, the anti-trigger comes through, and now on the other side we'll be going over with Ali Eldrazi. We'll see if he's able to find the early ramp tools and if the Aurora ends up in hand, if we ever get a glimpse.
Yeah, so we've seen a little bit of action from Annie so far today. Litton Lover is going to be looking to kind of do the same thing, get in, score those early points, use movement tricks to keep the battlefields in their favor, and eventually maybe use Vi and ride the wind to close it out. Ali Eldrazi on the other side with a different take on Dazzling Aurora with Misfortune to just find it, ramp up to it, put it into play, and then just get some unbeatable units on the board.
Yeah, and we've seen this time and time again on the Warrens game. Traveling Merchant goes in, trash a card, draw a card. Now the Warrens Conquer comes through, trash a card, draw a card, and I just saw a Scrap Heap picked up, so it'll be trash a card, draw 2 cards if the Conquer comes through, but the Gust going to be able to deny that.
Yeah, Ali Eldrazi is going to do everything he can here to kind of deny those early points and just have the time he needs to hopefully get Aurora in.
Yeah, I saw the 3 runes get turned sideways there, and I said, yep, that's a sneaky deckhand. But a Fight or Flight is going to continue to buy some space.
Right. You know, it's interesting because, like, Ali, he's really trading cards negatively here, but he is just stopping the point scoring. And, you know, he may be down a bunch of cards when he gets to the Dazzling Aurora turn, but the Aurora will just make up that disparity so quickly as long as it has the time to do so. Yep,
and that's everything in the matchup is time. And, you know, Misfortune is one of the decks that can't really deal with the Vi Ride the Wind at 6. You do have a way to kind of buy space, like a Fight or Flight can stop one of the Conquers, which can be enough, but you don't get to destroy the Vi. So if there's a huge enough trash, you might just be dealing with it again on the next turn.
Yeah, I mean, you know, really impressive for him to be able to stop 2 attempts to conquer on only 3 runes, and now we see that further paid off with the Catalyst of Aeons. It's kind of going exactly how he wants. The real question is just going to be, does he have the Dazzling Aurora?
Yeah, that is, of course, the question, but the fact that instead of, you know, Litton Lover being at 2, potentially able to score to 3 on this turn, it is just going to be the first point of the game. And even then, it might not even be an opportunity here for Litton Lover to get the second point. So going into, you know, this 3rd turn where Catalyst has come down is going to be really, really tough for Annie to actually score enough points in this game before MF just starts dropping bombs, because even without the Aurora, some of these Misfortune decks are able to kind of put the pressure on just playing Mind Splitters out of hand and kind of shredding the best cards from your deck.
Right, yeah. If there is no Aurora here, a Dead Bloom Predator, a Mind Splitter, they'll do a great job as well. But you see Litton is now going to take this kind of shields down moment that Ali created by playing the Catalyst to be like, hey, I'm going to score this one, I'm going to accelerate out of Kaisa and score this one as well. Although since it's a Sigil, it is going to come at the cost of a Rune Recycle and, you know, really play into that game plan of slowing them down as much as Ali can.
Yeah, so that's a full turn D ramp, right? Having to pay 1 for the Accelerate, now 1 for the Conquer. So just going to be very behind on the runes. But Annie is very good at playing this low econ, low rune game, as we do have Ollie now up to that very, very important 9th rune. And we just have the question, is there going to be an Aurora? I imagine if he's got it, it'll be deployed immediately.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Even just the moment of hesitation, seeing him start to think is kind of like, oh, well, he doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And now he's going to have to find the next best play.
Yeah, and it might just be a Dead Bloom, but we'll see. Maybe he was just considering if there's any other options, as that's 8.
Nope, no.
Not 9, so it's a Dead Bloom.
But, you know, as we said, Dead Bloom, no slouch either. And, you know, if Litten's going to want to use like a Fight or Flight or something here, the Dead Bloom does have Deflect, which will cost another rune again and really just slow the development.
Yeah, it's going to buy a lot of space. The Ride the Wind being kind of grabbed there as a consideration to just try and run away. The first one is free, is what I always say with the Ride the Wind, because Annie's Stubborn can always grab it back. So you're kind of allowed to use it however you'd like. And it looks like that may just be the case as we see 2 runes tapped, and that is just going to be the power paid. Ride the Wind to save the Kaisa for now. So that's the first one in the bin so that Annie Stubborn can grab it later.
Yeah, and you really just got to love the flexibility on Ride the Wind. You know, not only is it this really threatening tool to score points later in the game, but as you see, Litten Lover just totally okay with using it right there to protect Kaisa and, you know, keep her around to threaten more points and more cards down the line.
Yeah, the question now becomes, is there a way to kind of get through this Dead Bloom? Cleave is usually the best answer, and Darius Cleave is by far the best answer, but this is 5 runes. And, you know, we talked about how usually on 5 runes, you don't have to play around Darius because only a Seal is kind of that 0 cost to push through. And so, yeah, not going to be looking at Darius Cleave to push over this Dead Bloom in this spot.
Yeah, these are definitely the pivotal turns where Litten Lover's got to fight back against these big plays starting to come down, make sure Ally doesn't get to run away with it too much, and the Annie deck definitely has the tools to do it.
Yeah, Vayne, this is another way that this can be answered, right? That's now, Vayne gets the +3 might with the Assault 3 that comes in, and it gets to come in ready when your opponent controls a battlefield. So with the Dead Bloom there, this is now 9 might at home that can run into this Dead Bloom and should be able to get over the top.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, you're looking at Eldrazi's side and you're like, oh, he's got 1 rune up. I don't have to play around much here. But actually, Misfortune has one really powerful tool in the pocket in Bullet Time, which for only 1 rune, you could do a lot of damage. It comes at a lot of development, but Ollie does potentially have the runes to do it.
Yeah, there is always the spot where you say, you know what, I don't have the Aurora anyway, so I'll spend 5 of my runes and just go ahead and put them to the bottom of my deck, recycle 5 runes, and just completely blow out this play, and then gank over my Dead Bloom and say, you know what, this is going to be enough to hold out, but does not go for it if he even has the Bullet Time in hand. Instead, just gets rid of the Kaisa, and now Litten Lover has to consider if they wanted to pull back the Vayne to hand. Looks like decides against it, and instead will potentially look for a hold.
Yeah, it's always an interesting decision with Vayne, because Litten Lover could pay the energy, put it back in their hand, and then, you know, they have it to keep threatening those kind of big assault, enter ready moves, but it does cost a rune every time you're a player. Also, it's the Sigil of the Storm, so if you keep conquering that repeatedly, you're just going to lose more and more runes. And Litten Lover choosing to just keep Vayne in play, maybe seeing if they can get some points from holding.
Yeah, because, I mean, this is big, right? Annie is on 3 runes. There's just been, all of her runes have been gate-kept the entire time from the Sigil, from just needing to spend it on these power-heavy cards. But the control is there, and Ali is in trouble, right? He's not up to 9 runes anymore. Might be able to just go for another Dead Bloom, but this time it's Soul Gorger into grab Dead Bloom. So this is a massive power expenditure. Probably never getting to Aurora this game. It's going to come down to, can the units from your deck do enough, as this Soul Gorger is going to grab that Dead Bloom, and that's, yeah, recycle 4, maybe recycle 5 if you go for the Vayne.
Yeah, you know, Soul Gorger is really interesting from the Aurora decks, because I see them, you know, sometimes played as like a one-of to make sure they kind of never run out of resources to hit. But even in just a spot like this, playing it straight up, you know, it does cost a lot of power, as you mentioned, but this is a really strong swing for Ali.
Yeah, a lot of might gets to come to the board. Does not want to recycle that additional rune, so not going to go to the Sigil of the Storm. Needing to potentially stay on this break point of going from 4 runes to 6 to maybe 8 on the following turn. Still keeping Dead Blooms in mind going forward, as this is going to be dropping a Confront and trying to find an additional card. As, yeah, as I said, I think Aurora is very much off the menu for this game, and he's got to try and win with the other pieces.
Yep. But, you know, I think he's been doing a great job at that so far, you know. The first Dead Bloom Predator is often hard to beat. The second one, especially when, taken back from the trash by a card like Soul Gorger, can be even harder to beat. And a hidden card to back it up.
Okay, this is a lot of being expended as the hidden card is going to go down there. I mean, I imagine Fight or Flight. There's really not anything else that gets played in this deck most of the time. And I'm curious if we've got any like main deck rebukes coming out of the ante as well. That's one where it's like maybe there's one copy in the main and some on the side. And usually that'd be a huge blowout. But if I remember correctly, rebuke is at battlefield only. And so a Fight or Flight could actually be massive here, where you make your opponent recycle 3 runes to target the Dead Bloom with a rebuke, and then you just kind of send it home.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I believe rebuke is battlefield only, and having that Fight or Flight hidden is really not much Annie could do to punish you and make you lose it on the spot, and it does just give you that extra layer of protection against, big assault units, things like Vi Ride the Wind, and anything of that nature.
Yeah, and it looks like Vi Ride the Wind is currently in hand for Lit & Lover, so trying to just get to that 6-point break point where you can really look to just send it and go for game. And for now, you're very ahead when it comes to points in this game, so you can just look to build up a huge board, get to that 6 points next turn, and then try and win on the following turn. You've got that time.
Yeah, we've seen this a lot from Annie, like just kind of using that early point advantage to kind of leverage almost like a setup turn in the middle of the game where you're saying, hey, I'm going to take off scoring points for a second and just make sure I can get what I need on the board to win down the line.
Yep, on the other side of Ali, going up to 5 runes now because of the hide actually going to be kind of off that even cadence. 5 runes does allow you to play maybe a Misfortune at home, but really there's not a ton that this deck does on 5 runes, and I'm wondering if there's maybe ramp cards in hand to potentially be played out, but that's 3, and an Invert Timelines going to just kind of reset these hands, dumping an Aurora and a Sabotage. And it's going to be a lot of cards gone for Lit & Lover, including the Vi Ride the Wind, but also that's a Scrap Heap. So it is going to be 5 cards drawn up for Litten.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like Scrap Heap, it's not just if you make yourself discard the card. If your opponent makes you discard it too, you do get that rebate. So, but, a pretty good deal for Ali as he was running pretty low on resources there.
Yep, so he's going to find a new grip of cards. And he does deal with a Vi Ride the Wind, right? So there is maybe some time that can be bought. Now, you don't know what the new hand is for Annie, and odds are those are pretty good cards too if they've made it into the deck, but it will potentially buy you a lot of space if you can continue to count those Vi's. Maybe eventually you can run Lit & Lover out of them.
Yeah, giving Annie a fresh hand of cards, definitely pretty spooky, as a lot of their cards are pretty redundant and really good at dealing with big units with cards like Fight or Flight, and let's see if Lit & Lover found any of them.
Yeah, a couple of flashes, which are a lot less good in this spot, right? The flashes maybe for the early game could have been nicer, but as of now, I think in this matchup, a little bit dead at this stage of the game where most of your material you don't really mind if it gets taken out. You're just trying to use the last few big conkers. So I will say, yeah, a couple of kind of dead cards, but the Fight or Flight will certainly help out a little bit more, as she is going to just try and target the Dead Bloom. Going to have to pay the deflect cost there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Ali could have ganked the Dead Bloom over to the Sigil, but I imagine just like not wanting to recycle a rune, and he's not really trying to rush the points down at this point. I think his best way to finding a win here is to kind of make sure he can just build up a really strong board presence and then use that to eventually look to lock Lit & Lover out. Yeah,
I like this 5 into 5 here from the Vayne into the Soul Gorger. Very willing to just take the trade. Fight or Flight is going to send Vayne home, but when we saw that hand fanned out from Lit & Lover, there's a couple of cleaves that are going to work great with the Traveling Merchant to still make this trade happen.
Yeah, that's a really great play by Lit & Lover, because it's kind of saying, I'm going to make you use this. If you don't, yeah, we trade, and then you just lose this Fight or Flight for free.
So double move triggers, try and draw some even more potential plays to go around here. And then the cleave available to just continue to push this over the top. So a lot of cycling coming through, a lot of stuff being put in the trash, trying to find the next copy of Vi, because, again, you have Annie Stubborn. So the Ride the Wind always gets through. It's just a matter of being able to find a new copy of Vi to replace the old one.
Yeah, and now Lit & Lover has kind of set up the exact situation that their deck excels in, which is, hey, I've made it to 6, and now really at any moment I'm just threatening that sweet end the game combo.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the reasons that a lot of players started to stray away from Misfortune was the rise of Annie. Is this matchup is actually very hard to play against because of how fast Annie can be, and we're seeing that here. You know, I think Ollie's doing a great job of trying to slow this deck down and try and stop it from being that terror, but as you see, so many resources having to be expended just to slow the deck down, and now even having to dump so many runes. Even once he found the Aurora, there just wasn't even time to play it.
Yeah, and you know, I think that while that Soul Gorger play was really powerful, he did feel the pain of having to recycle 4 runes on the later turns. And, you know, Lit and Lover really just capitalizing on that momentum and scoring points and just getting to the spot that the Annie deck wants to be.
Yeah, it's now being at 6, and even without Vi Ride the Wind, it's actually just kind of possible from this board state that you don't even need the Vi. Like, it can just be Darius Ride the Wind in a Cleave or something of that nature.
Yeah, definitely the cards that Fury has access to are just so good at just getting over the top of like one big unit out of some of the bigger body units, or like a Mind Splitter. And Lit and Lover really in the driver's seat here, but we'll see if Ollie can do anything to turn it around.
Yeah, and as you said, you know, one unit, right? Fight or Flight. There's one in the bin, so you just that's as good as in hand when you got Annie Stubborn, and I think there actually is also a Fight or Flight in hand, so a lot of ways to kind of deal with this, as that is going to be the Dead Bloom moving in, and now there's the consideration of do you want to actually push this Dead Bloom back? It would, in my opinion, be a mistake to push it back now, because the runes are up to play Misfortune Accelerated. You can send her in, re-ready the Dead Bloom, and then send it in again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like sometimes you'll almost forget that the Misfortune Chosen Champion is like a pretty big part of the equation, because it's just sort of hanging out there in the zone and there's like a lot of other things going on. But that ability to ready anything can really come up in big spots, and you know, we might be about to see one of them here.
Yeah, so I mean, you can either ready, you know, potentially ready a rune here to have 2 runes up to try and help defend with maybe your own Fight or Flight, or you get to ready this Dead Bloom, be able to send it in as a potential way to help hold, and that is going to be the choice, is the Dead Bloom. Just a stack deck while there's a showdown window here to use it.
Yeah.
Just make the most out of your energy.
Yeah, imagine this stack deck isn't looking to solve the problem now as much as looking to make sure you have what you need the next turn.
And she finds a Vi off it, so I think that is a big find. That's exactly what the deck's been looking for, to kind of almost guarantee to seal the deal where you get to develop the Vi. You will have to still kind of find the Ride the Wind via the Annie, so you might have an additional setup turn to make this happen, as the runes I don't think math out. But that's still the big thing that you're looking for, as Ali is just going to fortify this on Warrants.
Yeah, I will say, looking at Lit and Lover's trash, hard to tell exactly, but I know there hasn't been any recycles yet, so that is going to be a pretty gigantic
Yeah,
buy
a million,
when
I
time
think.
comes.
Yeah, I think it's about $1 million.
Yeah, maybe even 2.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. As you see here, Lit now, you know, 4 points on the side of Ali. Is this just another setup turn? As there's a Darius in hand as well, I believe. So you could just kind of play a Darius, be like, here's a chunk of might. I've got Darius, I've got Vayne, and then wait to play the Vi until you can actually do the full Vi Ride the Wind combo. In the event that you do run into something like a challenge, I think trying to play around that can be kind of quite valuable. The other side of it is you don't play around the challenge and you just play out the Vi, and then you're now playing around a Fight or Flight, because you've got the initial ready at the start of turn, and then when you move it in and then Ride the Wind, you can re-ready her with the Ride a Wind.
Definitely. Yeah, no. Ride the Wind's ability to fight back against Fight or Flight is really awesome, and just, you know, comes up a ton, honestly. And one thing that I want to call out here that's pretty interesting, and what I really like about this Dazzling Aurora deck that Ali has, is you would think when you read the Misfortune Legend, like, oh, give something ganking, that kind of sounds like an aggressive tool, and it's like, oh, maybe that's not going to be that good in this build because the deck doesn't play early units. But it's actually pretty pivotal in these later turns, because you could be like, I have this hold stack protecting this one battlefield, that's how I'm going to stop you from double conquering, and then to stop you from holding yourself, I could just gank one over and break up whatever you're doing over here. So it really can create these strong reversal board states where the Dazzling Aurora deck can dig itself out of a pretty big hole.
And I think that's been the pivotal part that pushed the Misfortune Dazzling deck from being like pretty good with the units that it had access to, with the Mind Splitter being able to rip cards from hand. You know, you've got the Dead Blooms, of course, being in the body color, and also, you know, things like Fight or Flight to stall, Bullet Time to stall, and kind of pushed it to being actually a very good deck, like a tournament deck, where now you also have this counterplay to the counter hold.
Yeah, definitely one of the decks that took a few iterations, but I think it's found a real really a really sweet spot in the meta.
And there we go. Readying up, gonna have to deal with the Vayne, but of course, as you said, right, you've got the easy access. Just go for the gank, you're able to get that dealt with, as Lit Lover didn't go for a full develop, just the Pouty Poro and holding on to a lot more runes. This time around, that is gonna be 6 runes, going up to 8, which would be enough to play Annie Stubborn, Vi, and Ride the Wind. Yep,
looks like Lit Lover is just gonna try to deploy that full combo from hand to close out the game, and I'm sure it's on Ollie's radar, but sometimes it's just one of those combos that even when you know it's there, sometimes you just can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, right? This deck, I think the only answer that it has available is going to be not Ride the Wind, Fighter Flight, or potentially Rebuke, but main deck Rebuke in this deck is not something I see a ton of.
Yeah, it's definitely like, you know, bullet time. That's not even going to come close to clearing the Vi threshold. Maybe if you have enough might in a battlefield, but it's definitely hard.
Yeah, it'll be really tough. So we are going to get the gank. There's this natural ganking also on just this Misfortune, as we did see an energy created, ready the rune on this. Now do it again, and then recycle the rune to the Conquer. So being able to get a couple extra energy for this turn.
Yeah, you know, that's another just really nice nuance of Misfortune. There's not many things that in the game right now that let you ready kind of anything you want. She could ready your unit, she could ready your rune, she could ready your legend, whatever you need, she's got you.
And now that's going to be another 2, 4, 6, so 8 total energy being exhausted here for Ollie. Could just be another Dead Bloom to help hold. It is a Mind Splitter this time. And you can take the Vi away.
Yeah.
So Vi Ride the Wind off the table once again.
No, the Mind Splitter is actually kind of exactly what Ollie needs here, because you know, he sussed it out, he does know about it, and this is something that he can do about it. I imagine he's got to slam this Vi here, and it's kind of going to put Lit Lover on a top deck, I think.
Yeah, this is the proactive approach, right? So you've got the reactivity of being able to have Fighter Flight as an answer, or Rebuke if you happen to have it in the main board, but proactively, you can just Mind Splitter out the combo pieces and get rid of them. And while you can't get rid of Ride the Wind because of Annie Stubborn, you can get rid of the Vi's. And we talked about earlier, if you can remove all of the Vi's, maybe you can get through it. And we saw one get taken out by the invert timelines. Now one gets taken out by the Mind Splitter. There's just one more that can even be in the deck. So if you can deal with that last one in some way, you might just have enough might to hold through anything else.
Yeah, and that was, you know, that kind of double-edged sword that you were talking about, where do I keep the Vi safe in my hand, or do I put it in play and risk it dying to a removal spell? Another thing that, you know, other than the Fight or Flight Ride the Wind situation, it does open it up to Mind Splitter getting to just yoink it on out. Yeah,
you have to decide, do I play around Challenge or do I play around Mind Splitter? And in this case, well, unfortunately, Mind Splitter was the one that Ollie had and was able to take it away from Lit Lover. Now, while this game looked well within hand for Lit Lover, I actually think it's going to be a struggle to push over this 15. We know there's a Cleave and a Darius, but there's not enough runes to do all the things that Lit Lover needs to do.
Yeah, and again, that Misfortune legend just sitting there threateningly being like, hey, maybe you can kick my Body Misfortune out of the sigil, but then there might be a Dead Bloom Predator who's going to gank his way on over.
Yeah, and the rest of the hand is a Kaisa and a Vayne. I mean, I think at this point, we're actually looking like Ollie has completely flipped it with this Mind Splitter. One card, completely turning the tides of this entire game. As the Darius gets to conquer, a card gets to be drawn by Lit Lover, but it has to be something incredibly impactful to make a difference here, because Ollie's just going to be able to gank over with a 7 or an 8 to try and score the last point and win this game, as 2 of the cards in hand we know are completely worthless.
Yeah, I think the big thing Lit Lover would be looking here, maybe be a Fight or Flight to try to, you know, push off an attacker, but we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, I was looking at the hand. It looked like a unit was ripped again. Is that just like double Vayne and a Kaisa? I think it's not enough. And Ollie might have actually turned the corner on this game that felt pretty doomed for a while off the back of a Mind Splitter, just showing the power of that kind of Thoughtseize effect, of looking into the hand, stealing something.
Yep, and he's going to start off with a stack deck to just be like, hey, I'm going to make sure I give myself the best chance that I can. I think I saw a Ride the Wind in there, which I imagine will help even further secure.
Saw another Soul Gorger. We talked about it maybe a one of in a lot of these, but Ollie opting to go for 2 of them in the list at least.
Yeah, and you know, it really paid him off this game. That was it cost him a lot of power, but it was a pivotal turn to make sure he didn't fall too far behind. And, you know, I got to say, if he wins this game here, I honestly think the MVP for him was Sigil of the Storm. Lit Lover just had to Because, you know, some decks can be like, oh, I'll just conquer the other battlefield, but the Annie deck is kind of priced into saying, I'm just going to conquer both as often as I can, because that's how I win. And when you're forced to just conquer Sigil again and again and again, it's just so many runes. And we could see, you know, there was that turn where they were one short of doing the combo, and that's thanks to Sigil of the Storm.
Yeah, and even in this most recent turn, having the extra veins, you might have been able to get enough might on the board to try and push through a second Darius, right? But how many runes have been lost to the Sigil denying that ability, or even the ability to play out an Annie Stubborn to grab another Cleave or just any other answer, Fight or Flight, whatever that you need, and it's just not there. So instead, it is going to be that game one going over to Ali Eldrazi on the Misfortune. And really, I was starting to even count him out as we were getting towards the end there with the Vi in hand, but it just came down to that Mind Splitter making it all happen.
Yeah, no, that was a really great game. And, you know, some people think like, oh, if the Misfortune deck doesn't find the Dazzling Aurora, they can't really play the game. The deck doesn't have much bite. But we saw there in a game with no Aurora at all, he was able to kind of just play his bigger units, get that Soul Gorger for the big tempo play, and get it done.
Yeah, well, let's jump right on into Game 2, see what other adjustments can be made for the Annie player, or even for Ali Eldrazi against this matchup that can be so difficult. Able to get it done in Game 1, but will he be able to get it done for the rest of the series? This time, he does have his Obelisk of Power to answer the Arena's Greatest, so Annie gets to be on the play for Arena's Greatest, which is a struggle for any slow deck, but Obelisk might be able to make that still get flipped if it is the immediate Catalyst and an Aurora in hand. You can kind of start to bring things back.
Yeah, it is interesting because it's kind of like the bounce back where it's like Arena's Greatest is a big going first, but then Obelisk is a big going second battlefield, and, you know, it's going to give both players power. I do think Litton Lover might have missed the rune from Obelisk.
Like yeah.
But a Catalyst from Ollie is going to really vault him ahead on development.
Yeah, it does look like it was missed, but it did look like a sneaky deckhand was picked up, so this is going to be a lot of early points going to Litton Lover. Already going to be up to 3 as Ali Eldrazi is completely tapped out. Nothing he's going to be able to do to react to this as the Traveling Merchant gets to move on to the Obelisk as well.
Yep, and you know, the Sigil of Storm no longer a factor this game, so Litton Lover is just going to be able to conquer as much as they want to.
Yeah. We'll see if that rune ends up eventually mattering. Usually with Annie, you can kind of get away with it and it's okay, but we did see, you know, how much damage Sigil of the Storm did last time, so even that one rune might end up making a difference in this game. You really want to make sure that you just slowly, when you start the games, make sure you hit all those triggers.
All right, and this game, we'll get to see if Ali actually can get that Dazzling Aurora down. This isn't going to be the turn for it. What would his best play this turn be?
I mean, 8 runes, you can just kind of Dead Bloom at this point. It is tough for Annie to deal with the Dead Bloom. It's not a fun card for Annie to actually have to deal with. It would slow down your Aurora yet another turn, so sometimes it's not exactly what you want to see. It's why we've even seen some MF Aurora decks going towards more of the Mountain Drakes and the Ursine, like staying away from the high power costed stuff, so you can still play them out and hit your Aurora on curve.
Yeah, it is an interesting fork because it's like, do I want, if Ollie's looking at both a Dead Bloom and an Aurora, being like, do I want to play this now? Do I feel like I'm far enough behind that I need to get this on the table and contest some of these points? And that is what we're going to see here, added onto the Obelisk of Power to come try to smush the poor Traveling Merchant.
And usually smush indeed would happen, but that is just going to be a Fight or Flight to buy the time for the Merchant this time around, so going to be able to easily go up to 5 points just lightning fast from Annie. And I believe in the hand I also did see a Rebuke, so there is, you know, even more time that can be bought. Either could have sent this Dead Bloom back to hand, or it decides this time to just Fight or Flight instead. And I wonder if that Rebuke is just being held to try and grab that last point because it is such a potent ability.
Yeah, Litton Lover really looking like they're gonna lean into the Arena's Greatest here, try to rack those points up fast. And it's actually interesting that probably the most resilient threat against Rebuke is Dead Bloom Predator, because, you know, if Ollie starts with all his runes and he's just, you know, gonna attack a battlefield, if it gets rebuked, it could just come right back down onto the same battlefield.
All right, so up to 5, just a Kaisa at home, gonna pass the turn. We'll see if Ali decides to spend any runes before sending the Dead Bloom in, because that's where things could really come into play with the Rebuke. But spending a rune for Sabotage will be able to easily deal with it, as he can just get rid of that Rebuke, and that's such a nice answer to have.
Yeah, and honestly, not the best hand here from Litton Lover. They are going to have to hopefully get some extra draws off the Kaisa they already have in play, or maybe this Traveling Merchant will stick around to help dig for some new options. But with the Sabotage taking the Rebuke, it does feel like Ollie might be able to put himself in the driver's seat pretty soon.
Yeah. I think that Littenlover was pretty reliant on this Rebuke for finding a winning line, and this is going to be a big struggle to deal with the Dead Bloom now. There is, of course, the Fight or Flight in the bin that you can go and grab with the Annie Stubborn to kind of conquer up to 7 with your Kaisa and maybe draw an extra card and try and look, but that doesn't get you that 8th point, and the 8th point becomes so difficult due to, as you've mentioned, the ganking from Bounty Hunter, allowing this Dead Bloom to just run amok back and forth.
Yeah, I think Littenlover is going to have a pretty good chance to close this one out, but it's going to have to be done pretty quickly before the Misfortune deck can run away with it.
So there we're going to just have potentially Misfortune Captain come from the champion zone.
Yeah, if Misfortune Captain comes in, especially accelerated to knock out the sneaky deckhand, it's kind of going to be saying no more free points, but instead we're going to see a Mind Splitter to really, really fully pick apart Littenlover's hand.
Yeah, just keep shredding the hand and put way too much might to be dealt with, and this completely locks out the Annie Stubborn Fight or Flight Conquer line, as well as a hidden card coming down. So this stack becomes difficult to deal with unless Littenlover can find something like the Vi to try and push over the top.
And one thing I really love about this play is if Ollie had, let's say, attacked and killed the sneaky deckhand, the Kaisa could have potentially conquered back and drawn a card. But now this way, it pretty much leaves close to no opportunities for this Kaisa to conquer, since sneaky deckhand already controls the battlefield, and that's just one less card that, you know, Littenlover is going to be able to draw.
Yeah, and now the sneaky deckhand draw from Littenlover on the top of the deck this time. Sneaky deckhand plus flash. That doesn't do anything in this matchup. There's really not much that can be done here, and sneaky deckhand is way past its time. It's something that you want to be able to rummage away, and we're not on Zon Warrens anymore. So this is kind of stuck. It's just a dead card, as well as the flash, realistically.
Yeah, Sneaky Deckhand, really one of those cards that just has an insane range. Sometimes it's the best card you've ever seen, and sometimes it is a 3-mana, 2-might, do absolutely nothing. I would rather it be anything else, and this is one of those times.
Yeah, and for this turn to have to just be pass, do nothing, and it's not even holding up resources to do anything big. You're just giving time to an Aurora deck to continue to re-ramp the runes and set itself up to just have way too much might on the board to be dealt with. And I think this is the part of the game where Ali Eldrazi can start to really run away with things, giving ganking to the Dead Bloom, going to run over. Flash can be used if you want to maintain this 2 might, and realistically, I mean, I don't know if the Flash gets better.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the big thing that Littenlover has going for them is 6 points. You know, that is the magic number. So it's going to take Ali a couple turns here to get to the magic 8. And if Littenlover could just find a way to pull off the double conquer, they're threatening the win every single turn from here on out.
Yeah, I need something like a... There's a lot of runes here. I wonder if there's enough for something like a Fight or Flight to go into the Dead Bloom. You move in, you conquer, you get a Ride the Wind off the draw. You're able to play the Annie Stubborn, Fight or Flight the other unit, Ride the Wind over, try and score these last few points. But I think it's not quite enough runes to get all of those things done in a single turn.
Yeah, especially with the hidden card at Obelisk of Power almost certainly being a Fight or Flight. It is going to be a pretty big mountain to overcome, but I think this is an accelerated Kaisa, so it looks like a call to action.
Yeah, send these into the 7. The flash is there, so if this is a Fight or Flight, you can just flash everything back, which will allow there not to be a trade and still keep the might on board, which I guess is just kind of, again, like, it doesn't get much better. So this is where you just kind of have to deploy it. You've gotten through that Fight or Flight, and the question just becomes, can you now find enough to actually push through and find the win? And again, there is that Fight or Flight in the bin, so Annie Stubborn can find that for the next turn, and at least you can push one of these back. So there is kind of some opportunity to maybe find a win. Yeah,
I mean, I will say just getting that hidden Fight or Flight off the board is pretty huge. I would definitely, great play to trade a trash from that from Littenlover. A flash for that. And yeah.
Jumping in, 8 runes once again available for Ali.
It is kind of crazy to see how these games have just not been about Dazzling Aurora at all. And it doesn't really, you know, the lack of it has not actually looked that painful.
Well, and that goes to show some good deck building, right? You need to be able to have a game when you don't find it. And it is the difference between an MF Aurora deck and, say, a Garen Aurora deck. This is not to fire shots at T and his Garen deck earlier on, but it is just the nature of having the purple-orange combo instead of the yellow-orange combo for the Auroralist is there feels to be a lot more room to make a deck that is a bit more functional when you are missing the Aurora.
Yeah, and you see some of these Misfortune builds really lean into, I'm going to play Scrap Heaps, I'm going to play Treasure Troves, I'm going to play Pack of Wonders, and they are really setting up their whole game plan to be dig to Aurora, nothing else matters. And I don't know if Ali has those cards in his deck, but we haven't seen them yet. He seems just way more comfortable with just playing ramp into big units, and that's good enough. And if you have Aurora, even better.
So we are finally going to see Annie Stubborn hit the board. I feel like the Fight or Flight is the only thing that is really helpful in the bin. In fact, actually, the only two options are Flash and Fight or Flight because Sabotage recycles the card. So Rebuke does end up at the bottom of the deck, can't be grabbed by Annie Stubborn, which is a very big note for Sabotage in this matchup. As it is now going to just be, I believe, just that Fight or Flight deployed. Deal with the Dead Bloom to send it home.
Yeah, this might be where Lit and Lover can try to go on a miracle run. Get that out of here with Fight or Flight, conquer with Kaisa, maybe draw another Fight or Flight or something else. Oh, but here's that sneaky deckhand.
Okay, so sneaky. This is saying, Ali, have nothing.
Yes.
If he's got nothing for all these runes, then you get to send both the Kaisas in to deal with the Mind Splitter and push through there. But it is going to be enough, at least for now. Does end up having a Fight or Flight to deal with the sneaky deckhand. And now sending in the double Kaisas, a Rebuke. So he does actually have it probably in the board and bringing it in as a way to deal with Vi. But that is going to stuff the double Kaisa and opens up a hold for Ali and a Dead Bloom at home to run into an open Arena's Greatest. And that's just going to do it. 2-0 for Misfortune over Annie, which is not the result that I would normally expect for this matchup.
Yeah, Ali kind of just played it really well, had what he needed when he needed it, and it really is amazing to just see the Aurora deck's ability to just cover those point spreads, because both games, he was just in like a 5 or 6 point hole and was just able to battle back, and eventually just kind of get to that board state where he could just have a big unit in each battlefield or threaten the ganking while having the interaction from his hand that he needs.
Starts to make me think there's maybe a bit more to the matchup than just like a big Annie favor. I think coming into this event, I probably would have put it at like a 60-40 for Annie. But, we look at this matchup, and while it still looked tough, it didn't feel like Ali was completely out of control or out of contention at any moment. And it may just be that the MF build does need to be flexible enough to really lean out of the Aurora in this specific matchup, really lean to get a Dead Bloom down and kind of defend it, as Dead Bloom is so difficult for the Annie list to actually kind of handle.
Yeah, I mean, we saw in both the games really just the rune tax that's put on by Sigil of the Storm, put on by Deflect, really can kind of just back Annie into a corner, because the Annie deck loves to just get all its runes into play, use the Annie from the champion zone, just kind of have a ton of energy to work with, and that just wasn't something Lit and Lover was able to do this match.
And I think really notably that we can kind of look at from this match is Ali's ability to kind of dodge the Vise. And one of them was, of course, blind, invert timelines kind of gets rid of it. And then from there, it's pretty targeted on, hey, I lose the Vise, so when I'm thinking about what options I have for my turn, the Mind Splitter has to be the best choice, even though it does completely run you out of resources, so you won't really have much to defend from there. The might of that, plus denying the one card that always beats you, is enough to actually make it happen.
Yeah, the invert timelines was really cool there, because I feel like, thinking about it, I'm sure this is not kind of the intended role for the card in the deck, but it does allow you to be like, that your Annie opponent is likely just trying to hoard the combo into their hand, and you can just catch them off guard with an invert timelines, get like a Ride the Wind, a Vi, and they do get to draw 4 new cards, maybe the 5th like we saw with Scrap Heap, but they do still have to draw the extra copies, and they're not always going to.